My name is Matthew Giroux, and today I'm going to be talking about climate change and the problems it causes and what some proposed solutions are. So, what is climate change? Because of carbon emissions from factories, cars, and other manufacturing, these greenhouse gases are trapped in the atmosphere and cause the heat from the sun to be trapped and warm the earth over time. This can cause a myriad of negative effects, such as the melting of the polar ice caps, flooding, forest fires, and many others. If you look at the picture to the right, you can see the natural greenhouse effect, where the sun emits solar radiation through the atmosphere, it bounces off the Earth, and re-radiated heat escapes back into space. But because of more greenhouse gases, less radiation can escape into space, therefore heating the surface of the Earth. The global scale of this problem can be explained by Bill McKibben in Global Environmental Politics from Person to Planet when he says, "We've raised the average temperature of the planet just under 0.8 degrees Celsius. A third of the summer sea ice in the Arctic is gone. The oceans are 30% more acidic, and since warm air holds more water vapor than cold, the atmosphere over the oceans is a shocking 5% wetter, loading the dice for devastating floods." Now, this is a very pressing issue because 0.8 degrees Celsius might not sound like a lot, but over time, this number, if it hits 2 degrees, will cause all of these things to happen. There have been many attempts to find a solution for climate change and global warming, and one of which was the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement is an agreement ratified by most of the countries in the world that focus on climate change and reducing global carbon emissions. The aim of the Paris Agreement is to keep the temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius. The Paris Agreement also focuses on helping support other developing countries that may not have the needed resources or power to actively combat the huge issue that is global warming/climate change. Now, the Paris Agreement, was it successful? In short, not really. The Universal Ecological Fund wrote a report that says out of the 184 parties that signed the agreement, 75% of them have not sufficiently reduced carbon emissions to the level that is required from the agreement. The report also notes that a lot of the poor and developing countries cannot reduce their emissions enough to meet the standard of the Paris Agreement without the financial and technical support they were promised but not given. Another reason or proposed solution is to change on a corporate level for the global emission leaders. Now, the top 20 companies that contribute to carbon emissions are responsible for 35% of all emissions since 1965. The majority of these companies are part of petroleum, coal, or natural gas industries. This goes to show that for the past 55 years, the top 20 companies have not made strides to reduce carbon emissions and combat climate change. And one example of these companies is ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil has said that they have invested $10 billion since the year 2000 in reducing carbon emissions. Along with this, they've also said that they've set some short-term goals, such as cutting methane emissions by 15% and reducing the burning of excess gas at wells by 20% between 2016 and 2020. While these may seem like great steps to fight climate change, they're mostly a smokescreen to make them appear environmentally conscious. Companies like ExxonMobil know that sustainability is not profitable, so they appear to reduce emissions so they can prolong the value of fossil fuel in the global economy. They do this by setting these short-term goals, like cutting methane emissions by 15% between 2016 and 2020, but these short-term goals are not nearly enough what is needed to slow down climate change. Now, let's talk about the global perception of climate change. The Pew Research Center did a survey of 26 of the world's largest countries and asked the population if they perceive climate change as a threat. The data showed that some countries had 90% of the population see climate change as a major threat, with other countries having 38% of people believe that climate change is a major threat. This is a big difference. As you can see on the graph on the right, countries like Greece had 90% of the people think that it's a major threat, but in Israel, 38% of people think it's a major threat. This brings the median of the data to 68% of the people and the world's largest countries believe that climate change is a major threat. 68% is not nearly enough for what is needed to change this pressing issue. As you can see on the graph to the right, the US and Russia, which are two of the largest countries in the world, are at the bottom portion of this list, with 59% and 43% seeing it as a major issue. This needs to change in order for climate change to be solved. In conclusion, climate change is a global issue that needs a global solution. I believe that this solution is through educating the new generation so the world realizes the magnitude of this problem. The only way that this issue can be solved is if humanity comes together as a species and truly realizes that we are all in this together because it will take a global effort to solve this problem.